Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I'm Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, and thank you for stopping by. All right, guys, for this episode of Bullet Points, we're going to dive into Boston. Now, Massachusetts has a bill that's been introduced. It's about basically being experienced with a firearm before you can carry it or buy it, something of that nature. It's not about that bill. The big thing here is we're going to dive into an opinion piece because this is important. If you guys recall, there was another opinion piece that we covered on Bullet Points about 3 weeks ago, all about a reporter that went into a Texas gun range, and the whole thing was about a seductive gun culture, and she was able to reduce the seduction, but other women weren't, so she was more elitist, and she could resist it for now. It's linked in the description box below and a card right here up on the screen, but the big thing here is this is a very similar article. Now, an author of this opinion piece from Boston went into the idea of how difficult it was to train and how insane it is to expect anyone to be able to train quickly, and therefore it should be a very big mandated ordeal to own a gun. That's the whole idea here. Now, it's linked in the description box below, and I want to hear what you guys think on this, because right here, this is what the left does. They always make everything far more complicated than it is, and they put a big onus on how complicated it is because you can't figure it out, because they couldn't figure it out. But enough set up. Let's dive in. I want to know what you guys think on this because this is important. All right. So here's the actual opinion piece title. Shouldn't you learn how to shoot a gun before you own one? Own one. No, you shouldn't. In Massachusetts, you can buy and carry a gun without ever having fired one. Okay. It's almost like it's a right. So my answer to this question of this opinion piece is, should you learn how the government works before you vote? Should you do poll taxes to support it? And more importantly, should you own land in order to vote since you have a greater stake? The answer to all those questions is no. Because anytime you put a requirement on a right, it leads to a disproportionate, what's the best way to say that? It leads to a isolation of specific groups, which denies them rights. That's why you don't do this. There's no requirements on rights. That's why it's a right, not a privilege. Anyway, let's keep going. This is where they set up the idea. They're using the idea of teachers having guns. That's what this whole thing was the premise on. But check this out. I purchased a 9mm Sig Sauer P320 semi-automatic pistol, joined the local gun club so I'd have a place to practice, and hired a professional trainer, a retired ATF agent, to teach me the art of tactical defensive shooting. Okay, if you own a gun, you have no business going directly into a tactical defensive shooting application. You need gun safety. You need to understand how the gun works, and you need to actually practically apply it in a gun range. And I've done that for 5 years as a firearms instructor, and it took 1 hour. Had people shooting in groups this big, like right here, at 10 yards. It's not difficult, but they're trying to make it difficult to make it look, ooh, it's really hard. We should pass laws because this is just too complicated for everybody. Here we go. You don't believe me? Listen to what they put their experience as. Whew. Over the course of the next year, at a cost of thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of practice, and instruction, this is what they learned. Let me repeat that. Thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours of practice. This is someone who's telling me about gun rights, okay? I learned how to extract a loaded gun from a holster, conceal it in my crotch, and then a little timeout. Don't do appendix carry. There's no reason to point a gun at your junk. Just saying. And fire several rounds in the general direction of the target. Okay, so it took you hundreds of hours of practice and thousands of dollars from a retired ATF agent to learn how to pull a gun from a holster, hold a gun in a holster, and fire a few rounds in the general direction of the target. Sounds like you got took to the market, man. Come on. Anyway, not exactly faster than the eye could see, but in under 3 seconds, which seemed to be the industry standard for tactical defensive shooters. We aren't becoming tactical defensive shooters. We're having the ability to defend ourselves. That's a very important distinction. But they're trying to make it more complicated. In fact, I came to the conclusion that it would be much easier and far safer to train special ops killers to teach school than to train millions of school teachers to shoot like spec ops killers. Okay. That is such an over-exaggeration. No one ever said that teachers need to be the Israeli military and be trained killers. What the idea was they would be able to defend themselves at the place where the children were most vulnerable. That was the whole point. But they're trying to make it they're trying to obfuscate the point and make it a lot more intense than it is. Anyway, here's the last piece, and this is where they disprove their point completely. The reason for this is the same as the reason I was never very good at playing tennis. I took the game up in my early 30s and fell in love with it. But I never had much success against players of my own skill level who learned to play the game as children because a lifetime of repetition had baked all the proper court moves into their muscles and nerves. They knew how to do it and how to do it without thinking. Yes, that's the point. To use the exact same analogy that they're using, the point of our Second Amendment and the reason that fathers and mothers teach their children how to use firearms and the responsibility of said firearms is so that you don't end up in this position where you are a sheep trying to learn how to get teeth. That's the whole point. They miss it completely, but that's the entire point of why we pass this along to the next generation. And that's what we're going to do on this channel. That's what I've got for you guys, and I will see you tonight at the 9 p.m. segment. This is Braden, signing out.